Hello, boys and girls, and welcome to the concession stand here on the KB Radio Network. I am your host, Kevin Reed, and welcome to the first ever double feature review. We're going to review two films today because I watched two films on yesterday, and to be completely honest, neither of them are worthy of its own show. So I figured okay, but I wanted to talk about them, and I said, okay, I'll just link them together. So we're doing a double feature today. It's a Grindhouse episode of the concession stand. Count them, two movies. Terror, which is a supernatural horror film that came out, I think, the beginning of May, and another film that came out around that time, If, which is a fantasy film, children's film, I guess you could say, live action animated fantasy comedy and all type of good stuff. And so we got two completely different films that we're going to review today. Side A and side B. Let's start with side A. Let's start with the worst, and then we'll get into the not as worst of these two films. Terror, the supernatural horror film written and directed by Spencer Cohen and Anna Hallberg in their directorial debut, and you can clearly see that in this film. And it follows a group of college students who, after using a strange tarot deck, began to gruesomely die one by one and must uncover the deck's mystery before time runs out. This film stars Harriet Slater and Jacob Batalon, who, for all of our MCU Spider-Man fans, he played Ned in all of those Spider-Man films, the Tom Holland Spider-Man films. This was, I think, my second time seeing him in something other than Spider-Man. And oh boy, he should have stayed away from this one. This movie was horrible. There's no point sugarcoating it. There's no point trying to deceive you in any way. This movie is bad. I mean, almost unwatchable bad. I haven't seen a movie like this in so long. It made me smile at the end because I haven't seen a movie like this in so long, and that's not a good thing. That's not a pat on the back in no shape, form, or fashion. This movie, it's a horror film that has zero scares at all. Now, there's a creepy moment, and I mean one creepy moment. I would say beginning of the third act that involves an elevator. That was kind of creepy. Aside from that, this movie was so dumb. It was trying to mix, I guess, Destination with Ouija, or I don't honestly, I don't know. I definitely got Final Destination vibes, but nowhere near as good. Nowhere. You picked the worst installment in the Final Destination franchise. I think there's what, five, maybe six of those movies. Just pick the worst one, and it would be the greatest film on God's green earth in comparisons to Terror. This movie the plot of this film was ridiculous. It made no sense. The deaths weren't even. Ugh. Now I know this movie was PG-13. Of course, you're not going to see guts and blood and gore, but this is the rare occasion where I feel they should have just went all out. They should have just went the lopping heads off and uh, splitting people open. I mean, if you're gonna do it, do it. I mean, just go for it, because what we got was completely ridiculous. I don't think it's in theaters anymore. I think it's going to uh, on demand or whatever it's called now. But it's not even worth it. But this movie made some money. It only made $42 million at the box office, which is horrible by some standards. But this movie only cost $8 million to make. So it was profitable. So it was a hit in certain circles when you look at it. But man, I hope they don't mess with this no more. Leave this alone. This movie had horrible direction. I mean, horrible direction. And I know these are the, you know, directorial debuts from this pair, and I get it. You could tell. So I'm giving them a little bit of a pass because it's their first time, and you could tell they were experimenting. They were trying some new things. The camera never stayed still. It never stayed still. I'm cool with the camera moving, but sometimes you need to be still. Let the moment just be instead of trying to push us towards a moment. And that's what the cinematography was doing in this film, and it was just ridiculous. It was it was really ridiculous. You would think, okay, well, maybe the acting saved it. No, no, the acting did not save this movie. Bad acting all around. I haven't heard of any of these actors and actresses that were in this film. I've seen them in things, like I said. I've seen Joker. I seen Jacob Batalon in Spider-Man, of course, and he did excellent in that. So that lets me know that it isn't him. It was the movie. Harriet Slater, I think I've seen her in something before. She looks familiar, but she didn't stick out, and she was the quote unquote star. She was the female lead in this film, but I mean, it was just bad. The acting was bad. The other actors, they brought nothing to the table. This was just empty calories of a horror film. And I get the studio. They were just trying to throw something against the wall, see if it stuck. And it didn't do it for me. It just did not get there for me at all. And I wasn't expecting nothing out of this. None of this shocked me. Like I said, I walked away from this movie smiling because I wasn't expecting nothing. And that's exactly what I got. Terrell from 2024, just this year, gets a letter grade of an F. There was no redeeming part of this movie at all. Soundtrack, nothing. The score didn't work. The direction didn't work. The acting didn't work. And the script, oh my God, this did not work at all. Yeah, it gets an F. It really is embarrassing in a lot of ways. I thought we were past that in horror films. You remember when we was getting those crop of horror movies? I want to say early 2000s, mid maybe 2010s, and around that area. Just stupid little horror films just thrown out there, and they were what they were. But they had a scene or two in there that made it watchable. There is nothing in this movie that makes it watchable. Absolutely nothing. It's really 2 hours. Well, not it. It's not 2 hours. Thank God. It's about an hour and 40 minutes of my life I can't get back. And that's the one thing I regret. That is an hour and 40, maybe 45 minutes that I just can't get back. But it is what it is. Terrell gets an F. So let's jump into something a little more cheery. Our second film in this double feature review. And this one isn't as bad. This one's not as bad as Terrell. I don't think nothing can be that bad this year. Terrell is the leading candidate right now for worst movie of the year of 2024. I don't even think it's close. I haven't seen anything that bad. But if the live action animated fantasy comedy film, which is written, produced, and directed by John Krasinski, who gave us A Quiet Place and A Quiet Place 2. We know him from The Office, from the Jack Ryan series that was on Prime. Very good director. Very good director. And he's going into this family fantasy realm, which is a huge departure from his previous two directorial efforts, like I mentioned, A Quiet Place and A Quiet Place 2. And I mean, night and day. So I was kind of skeptical about this movie because it's not easy to change genres. It's one thing to go from horror to action, to go from drama to comedy. You can kind of, finesse a few things to ease you into that. But to go to horror or go from horror to a family fantasy film, that is a stretch. And so it really gave me pause a little bit. It gave me a little pause, to be completely honest with you. And I have full confidence in him and all who are involved in this film. Just for an example, Ryan Reynolds, you have John Krasinski himself starring in this film, Fiona Shaw, Alan Kim, Kaylee Fleming, in the voice talents of just, I don't know, a plethora of Hollywood, maybe three-fourths of Hollywood. You had Phoebe Waller-Bridge, the late great Louis Gossett Jr., Steve Carell lended his voice as well. Aquafina, Emily Blunt, George Clooney, Bradley Cooper, Matt Damon, Bill Hader, Richard Jenkins, Keegan Michael Key, so many, and on and on and on. But the premise to this film, it follows a young girl and her neighbor who find themselves able to see imaginary friends. That's where "if" comes from. It's a letter from both of those words. But this is a kind of a live action version of Foster's Home for Imaginary Friends. If anybody ever watched that cartoon on Cartoon Network, I know about it because my daughter, when she was younger, watched that show. And I watched it with her. It was pretty funny. And it's basically the live action version of that cartoon, even though it's not based on it or anything like that. But it has some strong similarities, and it has that same vibe. It also has the vibes of, and I mean this. I don't want to come off disrespectful to this movie because I don't look at it in the same light I see the film I'm about to compare it to, because I didn't like that film, and that was Tomorrowland. Tomorrowland was very disappointing, and it just felt like Tomorrowland, but a little better. Just a little bit. It's not horrible like that movie. That movie really, really, I think it wasn't so much that Tomorrowland was horrible. I think it was sold to us one way and gave us something completely different. And I have yet to get over that. But this film really does have that kind of vibe to it, kind of the same structure. A little funnier. It is funny. It's definitely cute, and I immediately realized that I am not the demographic that this movie was aiming to get its attention. You so I give a little pause on that as well. Despite all that, I truly enjoyed the young actress who is the lead here, Kaylee Fleming, who is very cute, very sweet. Ryan Reynolds is Ryan Reynolds. I don't have nothing bad to say about him. He's the same. He's the same in every single movie. So it doesn't uh catch you off guard, or he doesn't do anything to kind of reinvent the wheel or anything like that. He's Ryan Reynolds, you know. But it's still interesting. It had nice little twist in it, but it wasn't too difficult because, like I said, this movie was aimed for children, and they couldn't had put a philosophical twist in this that would throw kids off. No Sixth Sense type twist, but it was very it was a very interesting twist, which you immediately got if you have been alive longer than 15 years. You knew pretty early what the twist was, but it was still cute the way they did it. I enjoyed all of the voice actors who provided the voice of the imaginary friends, especially Louis Gossett Jr. You never miss a good thing till it's gone. I didn't appreciate him while he was alive. He just died what about a month or two ago. But it, it made me reappreciate Louis Gossett Jr. You know, just to hear his voice again, and he still had that voice that you knew immediately that was him. Uh, so gonna miss him. My knocks on this film, the pacing was off. I mean, severely off, which is weird because, as I said before, John Krasinski is a pretty good filmmaker. I ain't gonna say he's one of the best, but he's a pretty good filmmaker. So it was kind of jarring to see certain scenes go on, and you was like, when are they gonna cut this scene? And go on to the next thing, move this story along. It just felt draggy at points, and it kind of took me out of it. Like, let's get to the meat and potatoes here. We playing around with the side dish. Let's get to the main course. But other than that, everything else worked for me. I love the uh animation here. The visual effects was great. I think the cinematography was good. The acting was good. You know, and but the screenplay was kind of kiddie, but it's for kids, so it was meant to be kiddie. So I'm not really knocking it. But I got to give a review from my point of view, and my point of view is a 40-something-year-old man watching this movie. But I think for kids, I think kids would enjoy this. It really bothered me that it didn't do too good at the box office, even though it picked up a little steam. It's not a bomb by no stretch of the imagination, but it didn't knock the socks off. This film was made for $110 million, which, to be honest with you, I don't know where that $110 went because this movie didn't look that big. There were some sequences there, with the animation and all that looked, top notch, but nothing that I would say is a $100+ million movie. But what I know, I can barely balance a checkbook. So far at the box office, it's made $140 million, so it's not in the red, but it's not great either. But I think it will build up an audience once it hits streaming services and whatnot, and really take off. But this is a really good family film. I do recommend that if you have little ones at home. This is the film to sit down and watch. I think kids will adore this movie. They have some really, really cute creatures, I guess you could say. Well, let's just call them what they are, imaginary friends in this film that I think kids would eat up. It's very, very cute. And unlike Tarot, I highly recommend If gets a letter grade of a C. I think is a really good family summer film. But those are my reviews today. Tarot, the supernatural horror film, gets an F. And If, the live action animation hybrid fantasy comedy film, gets a C. I would like to know, have you checked out either one of these two films, or both, or you haven't seen either one and you're waiting to hear what I had to say to check it out? You can email the show, kbradiopodcast@gmail.com. You can also look up the show on all social media platforms. Just search for the KB Radio Network. Don't forget to subscribe to the KB Radio Network channel, if I could talk, and like this video as well. Don't forget about the 5 stars, the reviews, and sharing this show. If you're listening on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, iHeartRadio, wherever you are currently listening to the concession stand here on the KB Radio Network. Everybody, thank you for joining me for this double feature reviews of Tarot and If. I'm gonna do more of these. I'm gonna do more of the 2 reviews and stop killing myself with one review of a bad movie. Even though If wasn't a bad movie, but I figured, hey, I'll put it with one bad movie that'll make that one look even better. So We're gonna do more of these. Not for every review, of course, but down the line we'll do more double feature reviews. But until then, I want you all to know that I love you. Continue to love everyone, and until we speak again, you all be blessed.